Hi folks, Aisha here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. We are in the month of April, and it's during this month that we reflect on Christ's death on the cross and his resurrection. So I thought that as we prepare to celebrate Good Friday and Easter Monday and all of that, that we could look at some stories in the Bible leading up to that, and we can take some lessons from Jesus that we can apply in our everyday life. The first story I decided that we can look at is found in Matthew chapter 16, and we are reading from verses 21 to 28, and this is where Jesus foretells his death. So I'm reading from my King James Version Bible, and it says, "From that time forth began Jesus to show unto his disciples how that he must go unto Jerusalem and suffer many things of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and be raised again the third day. Then Peter took him and began to rebuke him, saying, Be it far from thee, Lord, this shall not be unto thee. But he turned and said unto Peter, Get thee behind me, Satan, thou art an offense unto me. For thou savourest not the things that be of God, but those that be of men. Then Jesus said unto his disciples, If any man will come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross, and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it. For what is a man profited, if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man shall come in the glory of his Father with his angels. And then he shall reward every man according to his works. Verily I say unto you, there be some standing here which shall not taste of death, till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." Alright, so the main passage, or the main verses that I'm actually going to be focusing on, is in verse 22 and verses 23. So in verse 22, you have Peter rebuking Jesus after Jesus says, I have to suffer, I'm going to suffer, and then I will die, but then I will raise the third day. And then Jesus basically said, Get thee hence, Satan, because he knew that what Peter was saying wasn't from God. It was more or less looking at things through man's eyes and not like the bigger picture. So for me, what I got from this, like what I really understood about this whole thing, is just being able to understanding the importance of discernment. Because just before we even get to this point, right, in a few verses before we reach to 22, Jesus had asked his disciples a question, and it was basically, who do men say that I am? And Simon Peter answered and said, Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus answered and said, Blessed art thou, for flesh and blood had not revealed this to you, but my Father which is in heaven. So it's like, previously, before we get down to Jesus telling Peter, Get thee hence behind me, Satan, we can see that Jesus recognized that Peter is blessed, because the question that he had asked them, the response that Peter gave was one that he knew could only come from God. It wasn't man's interpretation or man's thinking, right? It's just important for us to recognize when those in our close circle, when whatever advice or so they may give us is really and truly coming from God. And you can only really and truly know that if you have discernment, in my opinion. Jesus recognized that previously when he asked the question, the response came from God. And this time when he's telling them what's to come, the response was not from God, because he knew what God's will for his life was. He knew that it was God's will for him to die on the cross and to rise on the third day. So for Peter to say it will not happen, of course Jesus had to rebuke him. And it is okay to sometimes rebuke those persons who might be in your Christian circle when you may be sharing certain things with them and they're not seeing the bigger picture. They're not seeing God's purpose or plan. They're just seeing it from man's perspective. Another thing to note is that, sometimes you would tell somebody something, right? And they only hear part of it and then they're ready to rebuke it, Because, Jesus told his disciples that he will suffer, he will die, but he also told them that he will rise again. But these disciples only heard he will suffer and he will die, full stop. They didn't hear the part when he said, and on the third day I will rise and be raised again on the third day. How you didn't hear the part? How? But it happens. It honestly does happen. So you gotta be mindful of that sometimes you might share something and person might only hear part of it, hence they rebuke. But once you know the will of God for your life, then you could just tell Satan to get thee behind you and go about your business, because you know what God's will is, and you know that your friends, even if they're Christians and they may have a good walk with God or so forth, sometimes they don't necessarily see things through God eyes. They see things how man would see it. So be mindful of this and ask God for discernment so that you will be able to know the difference. I trust that today's video was an encouragement to you, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Have a great day, folks. Bye.